Hello Jason, it's Wednesday, March 26th, and I swear today's video is just going to be a normal video with no surprise extra presentations or anything. Seriously, it's just going to be a normal one. And of course, by normal, what I mean is that I'm going to do another top 5 list, this time the top 5 shows that I recommend for you to watch, because Lost is over. Unlike previous top 5 lists though, this one's in no particular order, though I am saving a specific one for last because it has relevance to next week. And because it's my favorite. So let's get right to it. The first show that I want to recommend to you is one that's been over for quite a while. It finished in 1991, and there were only 30 episodes. But in those 30 episodes, this show managed to make itself a worthy predecessor to something that would eventually become Lost. I'm talking, of course, about David Lynch's highly acclaimed TV series Twin Peaks. The show is, essentially, a gritty murder mystery revolving around the untimely death of a homecoming queen. Through the investigation of this murder, all of the secrets in the small town that serves as the setting for this series are brought to the forefront. And you'd be surprised at how many mysterious and obscure ways these characters' lives intertwine behind the scenes. So if you're looking for something that invokes that same desire to find out the answers to all these small mysteries that build up over time, Twin Peaks is a great place to go. Even though, like I said, it only had 30 episodes spread out across 2 seasons, it still manages to build a complete storyline around the murder. And quite frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if this show was something that ended up being revived in a couple of years, considering the trend that we have right now. Next, I want to recommend another show that J.J. Abrams had a strong hand in creating, Fringe. Fringe is sort of a special case because it starts off as an episodic procedural paranormal drama where they investigate case by case, episode by episode. But where this show really shines is in the fact that it's building these bigger story arcs without you even noticing throughout the entire first and second seasons. And by the time you get to the third season, there are entire multi-season story arcs building around you that you hadn't even noticed until they were brought to your attention. Aside from that, it's hard to pick out any specific episode of Fringe that stands out as one that just didn't work. At least in seasons 1 and 2, which gives you plenty of options for building towards a full-on addiction to this show. Now, if I had to compare it to one show and one show only, I would say that it's a lot more like The X-Files, at least in the beginning, than Lost. But over time, it builds towards, like I said, these giant story arcs that have been piling on since the beginning. And so by the end, there is this sense of one unified story that's been told for the entire run of the show. Now, one thing that Fringe and Twin Peaks both have in common is that they've essentially gained the status of cult classics. This next show is absolutely not an exception to that. In fact, if anything, this is the most cult classic-y show out of the entire list. And it is, of course, Firefly, and the movie that followed it, Serenity. If I had to describe Firefly in my own words, I would say that it's about a space cowboy with a heart of tarnished gold, gallivanting around the galaxy trying to convince everyone, including himself, that he's some ruthless captain willing to do whatever it takes. When in fact, what he ends up doing most of the time is what's right. Firefly is the brainchild of arguably one of the best living writers of television today, Joss Whedon. And all I think I really need to say about this show is that it was cancelled way too early. They could have done so much more with the feel that they built in just the one season that it was on air. And by the way, if you ever happen to pass by actor Nathan Fillion on the street, don't run up to him and say, "Oh, I'm so sad that your show was cancelled." Just look at him, nod, and say, "Captain." He'll know what you're talking about. The fourth show that I want to recommend to you is one that unfortunately not a lot of people in North America have managed to get into. Like Twin Peaks, it only ran for 2 seasons, but that's not because it got cancelled. The creators of the show actually decided that they wanted the story to be finite. And quite frankly, this show has one of the most delightfully ambiguous endings I've seen in any TV show. I'm talking, of course, about the original UK version of the show, Life on Mars. Not, I repeat, not the American adaptation, which completely ruined the ending. The show follows the life of a detective inspector who is unexpectedly hit by a car and sent back in time. Or at least, as the viewer, we're led to believe that he's been sent back in time, though that's left ambiguous for the majority of the show. And this is where it draws a lot of its parallels with Lost, because through the entire run of the show, you don't know whether he's been killed, he's in a coma and dreaming, or he's actually been sent back in time. To make matters worse, there are these mysterious interactions between the past and the present, and the main character has to decide if he wants to work towards getting back to his original time, if it even is his original time, or building a life in the past. And then, of course, we've got a killer soundtrack of songs from the era that it's set in to boot. And last, but definitely not least, I want to recommend How I Met Your Mother. Now, I know that you, Jason, have seen at least some of How I Met Your Mother, though I'm not sure if you're caught up yet. But for anyone unfortunate enough not to understand what How I Met Your Mother is, it's billed as a love story told in reverse. The present of the show is the year 2030, when the main character Ted is telling his kids the story of how he met their mother. This seems like a one-episode story arc, but the show creators have managed to stretch it out over 9 seasons. And just like with Fringe, it's hard to pinpoint a single episode that isn't worth watching. Where How I Met Your Mother really shines is in its infinite ability to integrate into popular culture. It's given us such potent pop culture references as Slapsgiving, Suit Up, and the Pineapple Incident. All of which will mean something to people who have watched the show regularly. But where I feel that this show really shines is in the fact that it's able to pull out of the sitcom genre temporarily in certain episodes, and really hit home with some extremely impactful moments. For example, if you're familiar with the show, consider the episodes Bad News or The Time Travelers. In both of these, the viewer is left at the end with this sort of punch-to-the-gut moment. And that, if nothing else, is why I would recommend that everyone should watch How I Met Your Mother. Moving on, challenge progress. I finished reading Pet Sematary by Stephen King. And started reading The Fault in Our Stars by John Green, which you can't tell is The Fault in Our Stars by John Green, because I don't like reading hardcover books with the dust jacket on. There, now you can tell. But I'm not going to review Pet Sematary yet, because that's something I feel like I can do in a later episode when I have more time and more books to review. Regarding challenges though, I've done some quick mathematics and the results are slightly disheartening. For example, if you're watching this video at midnight between the 26th and the 27th, then we're 23.29% of the way through the year. Did you see that sneaky moment when I looked down to see the number on my piece of paper here? Unfortunately, my progress in challenges fails to match this percentage. I'm only 20% of the way through the reading challenge. And even worse, I'm only 6.35% of the way through the running challenge. So, hopefully I can manage to focus and work through the disparity between my percentages and the year's percentage. And who knows, maybe before I even know it, I'll be caught up. And finally, Battleship. Your attack on C7 was a miss. And I'm going to retaliate according to my strategy by attacking C5. And with that, I bid you adieu.